Welcome back to another episode of Buffalo Happy Hour. Mike, what's going on?
Derek, today we're going to start our weekly episode with another useless fact.
Oh, yeah.
If humans had a vision as good as eagles, we would be able to see an ant on the ground from the roof of a 10-story building. We would also have brilliant color vision, UV vision, and would have nearly a 360-degree range of view.
360-degree range of view?
Yeah.
Is that because their eyes are on the side of their head?
Yeah. So they can see basically past 180.
Yeah.
So I would assume 270 is their sector for their eyes.
Because you still can't see like the back,
right?
Probably like 60 or the front 60 at that point, right? You even be able to see the front?
Essentially anywhere from 270 to 320. That's ridiculous.
So their eyes have to be canted a little bit, right? Or else they won't be able to see the front.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then they got that big old mouth, old beak. Falcons are fascinating. I always loved peregrine falcons growing up because they dove at over 200 miles an hour. I was obsessed with them.
Falcons or eagles?
Falcons. And then falcons are smaller, eagles are generally bigger, and then peregrine falcons I was obsessed with because of their diving speed that they would reach because they would hook their wings and they would get into a full tuck, and that's where crouch rockets came into play. And then in aerodynamics, that's what it's mimicked off of. And then eagles, I mean, it's just, first of all, bald eagles.
Obviously beautiful.
Correct. And then their wingspans are 7 feet. They're just awesome animals. But having that vision and that speed and then that power as an eagle, it's just incredible. So there's your freedom.
So if we were on top of a 10-story building, we'd be able to see an ant.
On the ground.
I'm trying to figure out how tall. Obviously, I know how tall 10 stories is, but what would be easy to see on the ground right now? That would be our limit from a 10-story building.
We would probably see movement of skunk for sure. Going smaller than that on a 10-story building.
I feel like skunk would be easy to see though, wouldn't it?
From 10 stories up?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out. That's 100 feet, roughly? If you think every story is 10 feet? Because normally, code is at least 8 feet, right? And you got wood in between, so probably 12 feet is a story. So 120 feet would be a 10-story building.
I'm checking, because I have no clue.
So 100, I'm just trying to, I don't know if I've ever, sat on top of a 10-story.
The building is 10 stories tall. This is usually around... No, that's not true at all.
What'd it say?
Because it varies. 12 stories is about 150 feet.
Yeah, okay. So 10 stories is probably 120 feet, 100 to 120.
Yeah.
So, interesting. So I work on the 19th floor. Would I be able to see... I feel like I'd be able to see a skunk running around from the 19th floor.
Well, you're adding damn near 10 stories, so you're almost doubling it.
So I could probably
That's obnoxious.
So I could probably see a skunk.
Start at 7. 7 stories up, you can probably see
7.
a skunk.
I work 19.
I understand that, Derek. Get off the elevator. Because I know you're not taking the stairs every day.
Correct.
Yeah.
Not 19 floors, man.
Right.
But even from 19, I got to check next time I'm there.
Yeah. When's that going to be?
I don't know.
After your next promotion, maybe?
Probably.
I don't understand bank structure. You get promoted every...
Yeah, but it all means nothing. The titles for banking don't mean anything.
Really?
Yeah. It's basically, so banking structure is, so when somebody in business banking or commercial banking, when you're working with a business, they want to see that they're working with someone at the bank that is a vice president. So in branches and everything, it matters so much more than what I do back office. But even then, it's all just for not your rank within the company. It's how external people see you.
Interesting.
So it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
For the most part, unless you get into auditing or advising, then it matters because then you can be a principal of a company and stuff like that. But like for general banking things like banking officer, assistant vice president, group vice president, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. So it's interesting. But yeah, so I don't know if I could, what I would be able to see on the 19th floor that would be like the ending part of my visibility. It's fascinating.
Yeah, man.
An ant's so small.
Could you imagine?
Dude, I can't see ants from like 6 feet. I look down and I see something moving and I'm like, oh, nice. And then I like blink and then there's a huge mound. Did you ever do that? Where you're walking
Every
and like
time.
you see one ant and then your eyes wander and it's like a whole school of ants? What's a group of ants called? Not a school. It's fish.
It's not a swarm either.
No, that's bees.
Yeah, so I don't know. An infestation. So
Sounds about right. We have an infestation of a mouse in here.
probably. Which we have to kill that thing.
Yeah, I don't know where it is. I don't even know where it came in from. Maybe underneath the door?
Maybe. What we can do is put some traps all around.
Yeah.
We'll send Dog the Bounty Hunter after him. Just kidding. He didn't do too good of a job in Florida. So anyways.
Well, he's still alive.
Dog?
No, Laundry.
No, he's not.
Yeah, he is. The remains came back and it's not him.
What?
Yeah. They did a forensic examination of the skull that they found or whatever, and it's not him.
When did that come out?
Like yesterday or 2 days ago.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So he's still at large, as they say.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So who'd they find?
Mm-hmm.
Barbara?
Probably the other ex-girlfriend that he killed.
Rip.
Yeah. R.I.P.
So weekly recap. What'd you do?
Research Brian Laundry. No, I'm just kidding.
You golfed in the freezing cold?
Yeah, dude. It was so cold that my fingertips started to lose feeling in them. I don't know why. Like these two fingers, my middle finger and my ring finger on my right hand. Maybe someone in the comments can tell me that I had a heart attack or something. But when I golf with these, I interlock my pinky and my pointer finger like you're supposed to. And then the middle finger and the ring finger don't sit on the club, I don't think. I think they go around my thumb. But whenever I swing with an iron shot on those first 3 holes, everything like from the bottom of my middle finger and my bottom of my ring finger up went numb. And I don't know why. Like, that seems so odd that only those 2 fingers would go numb.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's not like the other finger, so it's not like I'm cold. It must be like an actual... When I swing and I'm that cold, I'm pinching off some sort of nerve or something like that.
And it was, 47 when you were out there?
Yeah, probably 45, 47. It got up to 52, and the sun peeked out every once in a while, and it was like, oh, it's so nice and warm out. And then it just got so cold. I shouldn't have gone out that day. It was very, very cold, and I was very underdressed. I still wore like a sweater, 2 sweaters, long sleeve shirt under that, and I was still freezing. It's so weird. Like, it just shows how your body can get acclimated so quickly to temperatures, because in the wintertime, if it hits 47, you're out golfing like in shorts.
Yeah, right.
Because you're so acclimated to being so cold. But in the summertime, it drops down and you're just freezing. Mm-hmm. And it made me really sad that obviously summer's over. We're supposed to get 0.1 inches of snow next week. So mad.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. WGRZ posted it, so you know it has to be real. Dude, weathermen have the easiest job in the entire world.
We'll see if we actually get it. I mean, the ground's still warm. That's the famous line.
Well, La Nina is coming back or whatever. What is it called?
El Nino?
El Nino. There you go. Nina's my stepmom. What's up, Nina? El Nino is coming back, and I guess we're going to have a cold winter again.
Well, good, because we got to kill off these damn ticks. I'm sick of them.
When was our last El Nino? I thought that we just had one.
A couple years ago. Yeah, it's not this super infrequent thing. It's,
dude, why is it raining so much? That's the real question.
I don't know, but I'm all about it. Job security.
It's so annoying.
It is. It's super depressing. Just intake your vitamin D to the moon, bro, and then you'll be good.
Can you OD on vitamin D?
No. So what's great about vitamins in general is you can't have too many of them. You just literally pee out the excess. Your body takes what it needs, and then you just pee it out, whatever the excess is. It's amazing.
I feel like there has to be some sort of bodily repercussion.
There's not. unless you have some organs not functioning correctly, but otherwise you're fine. That's what's awesome about vitamins. They taught you that in school, in like middle school too. They're like, yeah, vitamins are safe. You can take as many vitamins as you want. You'll just literally excrete the excess.
But can't you get then like bladder cancer or something like that because your bladder is overworking?
No, that's the most feeble-traded assessment I've ever heard ever. You're fine.
What do you mean?
No, it's a vitamin.
Too much of everything is bad for you. There's got to be.
Fine.
I'm going to look it up right now.
Go ahead.
I think there's something wrong.
You probably got better service than I do in this bomb shelter that we built a couple months ago.
Hell yeah. There's got to be something where you can't have too much of it. If you have too much of anything, it is bad for you. Can you have...
Also, this is on Google, so I'm sure
vitamin D.
The Democratic liberals are taking it over to make us feel afraid of something.
You could find everything that you want online. Whatever you search.
Yeah.
You can search, going back to our conversation the other day, is Genghis Khan a good guy? You could probably search that and find a good article that says, actually, he had some good points. And it's like, all right, easy. 6 side effects of too much vitamin D from healthline.com. Vitamin D is extremely important for your good health.
And immune system.
However, it is also possible, although rare, for this vitamin to build up and reach toxic levels in your body. See, I told you.
It's a .com. It's not even verified.
All right, well, then let me go to the mayoclinic.org.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just going to keep finding sites you're going to be like, liberal pass. What is vitamin D toxicity? Should I be worried about taking supplements? Vitamin D toxicity, also called hypervitaminosis, that sounds super fake, is rare but potentially serious condition that occurs when you have excess amounts of vitamin D in your body. Vitamin D toxicity is usually caused by large doses of vitamin D supplements, not by diet or sun exposure. So you keep popping these vitamin D pills, you're going to be toxic.
Oh, well, guess what, Derek? There's no sun in Buffalo for
Correct.
like 9.5 months every year.
Your body regulates the amount of vitamin D produced by sun exposure, blah, 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 blah. Hypercalcemia. So buildup of calcium in your blood. That sounds right.
Great. Now, Autumn Leaf is like, I definitely have that.
Oh, yeah. Well, she probably thought that she had that before I even
brought it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. It's fine.
What about your week? What'd you do?
My in-laws came and stayed at the house.
Yeah.
So I had a host. They stayed at the Kelly B&B.
Did you print them off tickets?
Of course.
Did you really?
Not tickets, but they had their own room flyer with Wi-Fi passwords and everything. Absolutely. Told them to enjoy their stay, and yeah, it was a good time. Made eggs, banana caramel pancakes, bacon, water, of course, and then I believe there was something else in that meal. But oh yeah, English muffins with apple. What was the? Relax, champ. Oh my god.
I don't know if you remember the origin of the beep, because it's not optional, bud.
I wanted to finish my thought, so I didn't forget.
Doesn't work like that. Mid Wednesday whiskey review, when we used to do it, you have to do it.
Honey jams, honey sweet jams. What's her name?
Oh yeah, honey sweet jam.
Honey sweet jams.
Yeah.
So honey sweet jam. Sorry.
Yeah, jam, no S.
Her apple. What is it? Apple pie. Apple. What was the jam that I got?
I think it was apple pie. Right?
I think it was apple pie.
Yeah.
I put that on an English muffin, let them taste it, and they loved it.
Yeah.
Because it's amazing. So, yeah, I think that's the only thing from the podcast that lasted as long as it has. If it's whiskey, it doesn't last a long period of time. But yeah, no, it's good. So they hung out. I got very lucky with my in-laws. So I get along with all of them. Colleen's parents are divorced. So she has a stepmom now who's like a saint, very nice. And divorce is wild, especially when the kids that are affected from the divorce are older, like mid-20s, just because then that's, they're used to
so it was recent?
a quote-unquote normal household, and then all of a sudden it kind of like rocks the boat, right? So, like 8-9 years ago they got divorced.
Okay.
So so that situation was weird for me going into the relationship with Colleen because I'm super desensitized from family values and cores and norms because I'm South Buffalo Irish, which anyone from Buffalo totally understands what I'm saying. So that was one thing that initially brought Colleen and I close, was because I kind of helped her emotionally through a divorce. And my parents got divorced when I was 2, so I couldn't reflect too much on personal experience, but I told her, like, hey, once things settle out, it's really not going to be that bad.
Right.
Like, you get way more food, you get more gifts. Like, it's going to be okay. So kind of coached her through that. But it really depends on the new significant other that your parent decides to be with. It really comes down to them.
Mm-hmm.
And Colleen got extremely lucky in that front. Her mom is still single, but her dad remarried and semi-recently. And her stepmom is just like, she gets it, right? So she came in and she's like, I'm not your mom. I'm not trying to replace your mom. I just want to have like a normal relationship with you. And then, I'm not going to ever step over my lane.
Mm-hmm.
And having that, especially with the family dynamic that Colleen has where they're very close, it helped a lot. And there was a lot of sidebar conversations that I was having with her parents in that realm, and it was just incredible. So now we fast forward, Colleen and I are married, they come over. The only thing we don't agree on is politics, which is fine, but they actually like the fact that I am well researched. I am still open-minded, and although we don't vote for the same party, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's absolutely no compromise, and that's one of the coolest things about it. So her stepmom's an early riser, I'm an early riser. What we do every morning while everyone else sleeps is we have coffee, watch the news, and solve the world problems, and now we look forward to it. So they obviously live in Syracuse, and then when they do come into town, it's still nice to just kind of dive into COVID, dive into mandates, dive into vaccines, dive into whatever's happening in the world, and then discuss. And I'm really good at playing devil's advocate against a Democrat because,
Easy.
it is. It's very easy. And it's interesting, too, because Republicans are known for two things. One, having almost no sympathy ever. And two, having a memory of an elephant.
Where do you think the no sympathy comes from, though?
So I think it's because, and this is my honest assessment, and this really stems from a lot of the conversations that I have with her stepmom and her dad, because they're older, right? They're not old, but
Right.
they're older, but they're set in their ways. They've been Democrats for decades, but they're not progressives. They're like the classical liberal.
Sure.
So having that conversation with them, it's really cool to sit down and have the honesty that they bring into a conversation where they feel the way they do politically because it stems from them actually caring about a lot of people and then just having a giant heart. And as a human, politics aside, that's honorable. Like
Right.
that's noble. Like you would want that, especially in a person, is to care for other people. I feel like many Republicans, it's not all, but many, and then even conservatives, at some point, there's a line drawn, and that line is honored, and it's
money. That's the line. Money.
it might yes and no. Like money is one thing, but then it also comes to like at what point do we just say, COVID's a great example because it's something that nobody expects. It's somebody that no one has any experience with in recent history, and politics kicked in, right? So at some point, there's a lot of people on the right that stepped up and said, hey, the government should not try to play God. And at the end of the day, it's going to do what it's going to do. Nature's going to run its course. The left has historically throughout the pandemic, even to current day, has always been saying one death is too many. And from politics aside, that aspect, of course, like that's why you should wear a mask when you're in a store. That's why you should do these things. And then the right is always combating it, saying it's going to lead to something worse. It's going to lead to something more restrictive. It's going to lead to more government control. We're just trying to stop it now. And the left is saying, but it's in the best interest of everybody. It's in public's health interest. So what would you rather have? A government do absolutely nothing and just let it be free reign? Or do you think the government should kind of have some stipulations in place? And that's a very fair question. And a lot of people on the right, because I'm fairly conservative when it comes to a lot of things. I like to tell people I'm fiscally Republican, but socially liberal.
I think that's literally everybody in the world.
Well, now, and that's a lot of because of the people that we deal with in our age group. We've seen so much nonsense, and then we also understand, and we grew up with social media, but then we've seen a lot of different things in conflicts where we weren't around when unions became a thing. We were around when unions were already a thing. So we don't necessarily understand. Then we've seen war. Then we've seen social media. So we're getting bombarded by people on both sides. So now we're saying, hey, like a lot of it, I believe, stems from our public education of we need to recycle, stay away from drugs. It's okay to care about the environment. And then there's the other side of it of where you learn things. You learn about the Constitution. You learn about conquistadors. And all of the lessons that you're taught in public school kind of develop where you stand politically. And then when you answer the stereotypical pro-choice, pro-abortion, pro-death penalty, like no death penalty, and then you go down that list of what party would you typically identify with if you answered these hard, hot topic questions, a lot of us from, I would say, 85 to 02, we're pretty dead nut center just because of our education. And there's a reason for that, right? Like, all of the politics in our country led to allowing us to have the best of both worlds between socialism and capitalism and a free market to allow kids to go to school because we chose education as something that matters as a nation. And you can't fault anybody for that. What we're seeing now is people on both sides of the political spectrum bicker and fight because one side is overpowering the middle, and then the other side is overpowering their middle. And this is what we've talked about before, where now it's just a battle of the extremes, and then everybody left in the middle is saying, hold on, time out. Our current government is forgetting that they work for the people.
Right.
Greed took over, greed crept in, money took over, and then that's really dividing us. And then also you're having the MSN failure where our normal media is just a complete disaster. And then you're running into the propaganda filtering in from other nations because they're trying to execute their mission, which is to basically get rid of the best nation to ever exist by impacting our social media, our feeds, our conversations, etc. And the older generation understands and appreciates some of those aspects, but then they're still blind to fully understand that there's more to the news. Some, not all. And that is the really cool conversation to have with people, specifically my in-laws. And it's nice to sit down, not debate, but just discuss. And when it leads to the level of debate, it's not necessarily anger, it's just excitement to finally get into the root where you're engaged in a conversation. The octave level raises, but you're not mad at the person. You're just having a good conversation where you're digging and peeling apart the onions, the layers of the onion, and diving into the core central value of that human being that you're having a discussion with. And at the end of it, everybody comes full circle and says, imagine if Congress did that. And then everyone agrees. And it's frustrating because the right's not voting the way the left is, and then the right doesn't have anybody stepping up to basically support the party the way the right wants it to, and the left is taking over because there's more people on the left side of the fence where they have more people willing to go through it than the right does. And it's a wild time when the in-laws come over because they know they can have those open discussions with me. I'm never mad at them. Right. Like, if anything, I'm taking some of their wisdom and just trying to be a better person, but then also be open-minded, but then educate them on, hold on, you're missing some of these aspects. Like Joe Rogan's horse treatment.
Yeah, dewormer.
Horse dewormer came up for his COVID treatment, and I said it's a false narrative pushed by CNN. He's actually suing CNN over that, and he didn't take a medicine that is only for horses. He took a medicine that has been prescribed to billions of people by a doctor, and then aspects of that medication that he took has then been used to treat horses. It's not its only source of, medication. And they're like, well, we didn't know that. Like, of course, because you're getting only the MSM aspect. You're not diving into, well, hold on, if I'm hearing this on CNN, why don't I listen to Joe Rogan's podcast and get this? If I'm seeing this on CNN, if I'm seeing this on Fox News, and I'm able to put up with Fox News, and I'm able to put up with CNN, MSNBC, C-SPAN, whoever, I'll watch One American News. I'll watch, Nation One Desk or whatever the other news station is, but then I'll also have conversations with people that are inside of those countries. I'll try to gather more sources of information opposed to just watching MSM. And that's the battle. And that's the conversation. So that's what's really cool is because they know that I do that. Like,
so where does this go from here though? From like us in the US, do we keep fracturing ourselves so we have two different areas within the United States? Because that's where some people think that they're going. Are we going to have another civil war where ideologies are fighting against each other? Are we going to all come to an agreement because the silent majority is going to raise their voice and be like, listen, you guys all have to shut up? Like, where do you think that we're going from here?
I think it's going to be the silent majority slowly starting to stand as one. I mean, we're seeing it now with the vaccine mandates, right? I mean, Moog is having walkouts because they're a private employer. However, they deal with federal contracts for DOD, and their employees are saying just because you have a DOD contract, you're still a private employer. You don't have to mandate what DOD is mandating. You're choosing to or against that. Mm-hmm. You're seeing that also with Southwest and United and, other airlines. And sure, they'll hide it and say that it's due to weather. We all know what it really is, right? So the silent majority is already starting to take that stand, and they're winning. Southwest got rid of it. United got rid of it. Catholic Health is still bickering, right? They're still on strike. And part of that is due to mandate. Part of that is just due to a horrendous contract. Yeah, I mean, their contracts have been garbage. And that, too, the Democratic, party's history, that's why unions have mattered, because you're allowed to fight that fight, and that's good to have. But at the end of the day, people are sick of taxes. People are sick of, the same conversation about how New York could be so much better, because of course it could. And you're having the two parties bicker about what they believe their vision is for a better New York. And what we're seeing now is that left is not the way to go for the state of New York. People want more right. People want more conservative aspects implemented into the local government. So it's crazy. It's really crazy to see. But I think the silent majority is going to rise up. They're going to kind of plateau. People still won't be happy. And then if it doesn't settle out and then it's a final blowout, it'll lead to a civil war. And, dude, there's been so many people in the South that have been saying that for decades, that another civil war is definitely coming if we keep going down this route. We've kept going down that route. It's only gotten worse. Yeah. So the middle of the country, the bottom right of the country, and then the smaller counties in the Northeast are going to be the ones to push back. And LA just announced that they're going to force a vaccine mandate to enter basically any indoor public space, restaurants, etc. And there's people in LA that are not only fleeing the state and just moving, but they're also starting to fight back. I mean, there's rallies, there's Trump rallies, there's things that are occurring in LA that historically has never happened before.
I think, too, not only just because of that, it's the definition. CDC just said that the definition of being fully vaccinated is going to change, where it includes booster shots now. So you're not going to be technically considered fully vaccinated until the booster shots come out.
So what? And this is one of the points that I brought up with my in-laws. I'm like, if the masks were supposed to work and the vaccine was supposed to work, then why do we need boosters now? Like, at what point are we just going to come out and say that the vaccine didn't work? Because it works, but not to the extent that they said it would. Mm-hmm. And what drives up my anxiety and some anger, and just, it's not necessarily anger, it's just like an annoyance, is the left forgets what they've said. Mm-hmm. And the right doesn't forget because they have memories of rhinos. And then when you call them out on that, they're just like, well, that's not what we meant. It's like, well, then you can't have it both ways. Right. And that's the double standard for the left is what the right always calls out. However, to the Democrats' point, the right does sometimes do the same thing, without a doubt. And that's why the two-party system is basically failing, is because now a lot of people that are our age, 30, 35, we're seeing the forest through the trees, and we're seeing that both parties are also at fault, and we're just sick of it. And we're really just sick of the inner bickering.
Do you think that is the way forward, is
a two-party system?
No, trying to get a third party in somehow?
Dude, it's been. Abe Lincoln was a third party candidate,
I know,
essentially.
But we all know that right now it's not possible.
Yeah, there's too much money.
Do you think that is a potential way forward, is that this silent majority is somehow, some way able to fund a third-party candidate to run?
Yeah,
whether
I
it's
guess.
Big companies that are funding it,
But it's a global issue.
Yeah.
It's a global issue. There's two parties across the globe in each respected country having the same argument that we're having in the U.S. We're not alone.
Yeah,
and I learned that when I was on my honeymoon. I was like, hey, how is it here in Greece with the vaccine mandate? Are the people screaming at each other on opposite sides, like hoax vid, and if you're not vaccinated, you're just killing everybody? And they're all like, oh, 100%. Like, everything happening in the U.S. is not, uncommon.
Specific,
yeah, and it's not specific to the U.S. It's happening here. And honestly, it was refreshing to hear that, because then I realized, okay, so we're not the only ones just being a pain in the ass. Like, It's a fight. Like, people really don't like big government. People don't want big government in their life every single day, impacting every single thing that happens. I mean, people in New York can't stand it, where if you're making a decent buck, you're going to lose 40 to 50% of your income easy for taxes. And we literally went to war for 3%. Now we tax ourselves at 17% plus. For what? So that's why I'm starting to believe that something is going to happen, because people are just going to say enough's enough. We're done. Like, the government needs to just get their stuff in check and really just fall back in line with the Constitution, because now there's things that are occurring in real life that is in the gray section and gray area of the Constitution, where is it a state thing? Is it a federal thing? Is the federal overbounding the like, it's too much. And people are saying, screw it, just go back to basics and get the hell out of my life and stop taxing me so much. Mm-hmm. Our property tax, man, like, your property tax has been going up in West Seneca for what? What do you see? Right. There's no difference.
Nothing.
That's the construction sign still on your front lawn. It's been here for months.
Right.
Like, what are we really
almost
paying
a year
for?
now, yeah.
Yeah, what are we paying for?
What do you think is, this is kind of like same thing but different, because to me, I see a lot of hardline, whether it's a new social media platform, a new media platform, some sort of online media company that is fracturing things even more. Mm-hmm. Like, you not only do you have the mainstream media, but now you have all these individual media outlets that are aligning themselves with, well, even like Daily Wire, like Ben Shapiro's thing, or like, I don't know any left-leaning one because I don't really care about them, but like
NPR, I mean, there's a mix.
Yeah, exactly. So like, you have these new companies that are standing up to further in their line, which is making it even more fractured as a country. Like, we know Facebook is pretty left-leaning. We know Instagram is pretty left-leaning. Now Trump is coming out with his own social media website, which is obviously going to be right-leaning. Do you think that there is going to be a point where one pervades and then we get a new Facebook?
I think it all implodes. I think people just say, hey, we need to slow this down, because realistically what's happening, and we've had this conversation with friends of ours in the garage drinking beer, is if you look at current events and society as a whole as a house with a backyard and a fence, right? The majority of Americans that are conservative, kind of in the middle, they're sick of government, like libertarians, conservatives, middle right people, and then even middle left people are saying, hey, I'm cool with having my house, my land. This is my backyard. This is my front yard. I got a sidewalk. This is my driveway. Mm-hmm. Leave me alone. Okay. What we're seeing is a lot of people are starting to discuss buying other pieces of land and or changing property lines. And historically, conservatives and Republicans hate change. The Democratic Party and progressives have always pushed for change. And the fight now is technology has showed up and said, hey, we're not going to necessarily remove your house and remove your backyard. We're just going to kind of make your back fence not so straight and narrow. It's going to kind of be wavy, and it's going to be fluid. And then other things could potentially happen around your house. And technology has advanced so fast that humans have been trying to keep up with it, and it's changing the dynamic of our society at such a rate that we're not comfortable with it, so we start to bicker and argue. Then you add in elements of how nice that neighborhood is in that house that you own, which is our country, right? You notice and you like the fact that the weather is so consistent. You're getting 4 seasons. Everything is fine. But now all of a sudden, you have wildfires in the neighborhood next door. You have tsunamis at the neighborhood closest to the ocean. And then you have all these other elements showing up where now your house is at risk. And you don't like that because it's your house. But so again, all the neighbors on that street start to bicker and argue. And then you have different elections. Then you have propaganda showing up inside of what you're reading inside your home. And then you realize my neighbor's a liberal. My neighbor's a Republican. I'm not okay. I don't feel safe. I need to buy guns. But you can't have guns because now the town and the HOA prohibited you from doing that. But, well, I want to show my pride. Well, the HOA said you can't fly a flag. So all these things are happening in your neighborhood, and we can't keep up with it. So technology is essentially changing society as a whole, and it's freaking people out because now every time before you hit send on an email, you're not only checking your grammar like you used to, you're not just checking to make sure you said best or respectfully with a comma at the end of it with your signature block to make sure it's good. You're checking things to make sure, like, hey, is anything potentially mean? Can I piss anybody off? Like, could I lose my job over this email? Can I, like, offend anybody? Are my pronouns in there? Does that matter? Like, you have all these other questions before you even hit send on one email, and it's directly impacting your job, which directly impacts your pay, which impacts your house, which impacts your life. So you have so many other variables, and it's not that it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just that the rate of it occurring all around us is what's shaking humans to its core, because now we've lost the ability to just communicate face to face because we have this stupid device on nonstop that dictates everything we do. Mm-hmm. And then they try to advance things to make it more convenient, but then it comes into effect of, does this actually violate anything? Like, can Apple impact my credit score? Can Apple and Google impact everything I see every day? Like, at what point do we just draw a line? And then again, politics come into it. Is this does this violate anything in the Constitution? Well, A, B, and C. Does this hinder anything? Well, A, B, and C. How can I opt out of this? Well, A, B, and C. So all of that is occurring at once, and humans we're not there yet.
Would you do a pay to use social media platform if it promised you there was no data sourcing, or like they weren't selling your data off to other companies, they weren't flooding you with advertisements, they weren't using your data for anything? Would you use that or no?
I mean, I guess, but at the end of the day, I really feel like that is what's causing so many issues within not only our country but on Earth, and that it's just going to implode.
What is?
Because all of big tech, all of social media, all of politics. Well, what I'm saying is the advancement of technology is going to reach a point where we say, hey, kind of like in Area 51, we get it, okay? We get it, Apple. We get that you can make a 3D map on maps when we're driving our car. We don't care. We don't need that, okay? Just keep the blue line, tell us when to make a left or right, and then let me know what route I'm going to take. I'm good with that. Give me an ETA. Let me know if any traffic accidents happen, whatever. I don't need 3D. I don't need an avatar. I don't need to, the next update is going to be me driving 3D on my Apple CarPlay, but then all of a sudden it's going to be a view of me driving my car while I'm driving. I don't need all that. Like, keep it simple. And I feel like a lot of people are just going to start stepping up and saying, it's cool that we can have it. Do that behind closed doors, because we're not, as a society, ready to do that. We're not going to implement that. We're not going to do that. Like Elon, we're going to have an interface where we don't speak. We're going to use words without using words. Like, Elon, be a trillionaire, have that technology, sell it or whatever, keep it for yourself, however you want to do it. But we're not going to implement that into society because we're not ready yet. And then we'll let you know when we're like aliens. Mm-hmm. Aliens have all this tech. We're not good for that yet. We don't want to go from 0 to 30,000 feet above sea level in 0.02 seconds because we'll throw up everywhere. It exists. That's cool. We don't need it. We don't need that yet. I think that's what's going to happen. We'll let the companies and the technology exist. We'll pick and choose what we want to do so that we don't implode as a species. I think that's what should happen, and that's with technology. That's with society. That's with politics. Keep things incremental changes, not this, if we have it, it's immediate inside of everybody's house. We don't need that, because
I feel like we tried that though with cell phones, where we're like, listen, we're going to hold off a little bit, and then they just stopped making cell phones that don't connect to the internet. Like, you can find like one for each company.
When did we say that?
Well, like, what do you mean? Like, us as people, we never said that, but Verizon said, here, look at this new smartphone, buy it. And everyone's like, okay. Like, I don't think there's going to come a point where people like that next generation aren't going to want the new and cool thing.
And that's what I'm saying needs to happen, so that we don't just implode and create a civil war.
But I don't see that happening though.
It might happen if it's like, hey, if you roll this out, people are literally going to start burning things down because we mentally can't handle it. Seriously. I mean, how else?
Like, what do you think would come to that?
How else do you handle all these issues?
Right.
We get to that by not making any changes now.
But that's never going to happen because there's always money behind changes.
Correct, and that's the problem. That's what I was having the conversation with my in-laws about. And I said, look, if you systematically look at every issue that we are dealing with right now, outside of politics, inside of politics, whatever, what is the same common denominator?
Money.
And
Power.
which leads to, or is stemmed from, the biggest thing.
I'm confused by the question.
Greed.
Oh, yeah.
Greed is literally the only thing that's, really linked to all the current hot topics and whatever, right? Like, I want my old life back, so I'm going to have an abortion. That's greed. Like, greed is actually killing humans. If you look at things at a wholesome value, it's greed, and that's impacting every single aspect of our life.
I don't think that'll ever change, though. Like, there's not going to be a point where people don't care about greed anymore. It's just going to keep going up.
If it keeps, then yeah, it might just go full circle. And then we're going to go back to Jesus times where we just only wear sandals, and then we look at the Bible and we're like, hey, there's 7 deadly sins for a reason, and greed was one of them.
But isn't that why government exists in the first place, is to regulate all this stuff?
But greed implemented government.
Correct.
So we don't have checks and balances anymore.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. So it's going to be a massive reset where humans literally just have a civil war to get back and say, hey, we deviated so far off this path. Like, we were supposed to go 150 degrees for 24 clicks, and for some reason we had a compass that was off. We ended up going 6 degrees off track, and we kept walking for the last 300 clicks. And now we're not even remotely close to where we were supposed to go.
So you think civil war is the way to fix it?
I don't think it's the way to fix it. I think it's going to be what does fix it. Because what else is there?
Right.
You know what I mean? I think there's just going to be it's a power struggle, and then that's what's going to happen. It's just going to be 2 rams colliding into each other, and it's just going to be a fight to basically, it's like 2 brothers that grew up with each other, 2 best friends. Each side was dead set in their ways, and then all of a sudden they just fought each other quick, got over it, and said, hey man, I was wrong. And then the other guy says, yeah, I was wrong too. I was a dick. And all right, let's just reshoot our azimuth, get back on the same page. It's done. It's over with. I get it. And then we'll just move on. But we're not at that point yet.
So what do you think about restructuring the 2-party system to the, like...
A vote, ride or die.
Right. To, like, you have... We've talked about this a lot. We have the Democrats who have their... It's obviously a range. Like, it's not you're a Democrat or you're not. It's
right.
You're closer to the middle, you're further to the left. Or you're Republican, you're closer to the middle, further to the right.
Yep.
What if we, as a society, cut it off, like, in the middle of both of those and say, if you're at this point over, then you're a Republican. If you're this point over, then you're a Democrat. These people over here, they're fascists. These people over here, they're communists, whatever. Like, we have actually 4 parties, but, like, only, like, expel all the stupid people from your party, basically.
Yeah.
Kill them all. Just kidding. Don't kill them all. But, like, basically get these lines back to the center, because we've talked about this numerous times. That's where a majority of the people are, is within like 10 standard deviation from the middle. Like, you're not, this curve is like, it's an actual standard deviation curve. You have a majority of the people dead nut center, and then it goes less people as you get out to the sides of it all.
Yeah.
So if we cut that off, where 88% of the people are within a party and the other 12% are outside looking in because they're stupid and they still use social media for the wrong reasons, then that would be a way to kind of recalibrate our 2-party system to be some of what we want it to be.
Implementing a left and right limit would help.
So do you think that...
So I'll answer that. I'll expand on that.
Okay.
I don't know if y'all watch our Wednesday Risky Reviews. We've had a lot today, so there's a lot going on inside my stomach. So anyways, everything's fine. So anyways, if somebody in your respective party implements or proposes, that's the correct word. If, say the Squad, for instance, because a lot of people understand who that is. Yeah. The Squad comes to town.
I heard you worked at Jackrabbit now.
She shows up and says, hey, I'm going to propose this bill. Look at it. And it's normal Squad things, whatever it is. Then the party can say, this proposed bill hits the boxes of these items that we don't want because it's too far left. And we implemented this new system where this is flagged for being too far left. We're throwing it out. If you do it again, you're gone. Then they come back, propose another bill where it checks a couple boxes. You're removed from the party. We can't do it. We're not going to deviate that far as a nation. And there's another way to implement some of those ideas, but not as radical. You're gone.
Isn't that what the Constitution is for?
Correct, you would think. And that's the point. Like, there has to be another workaround to basically say the Constitution still exists and we're going to follow that as a nation. You're gone. And that's not happening. And now there's no term limits. It's a disaster. We need to the right's point, like the hard line that says, hey, enough's enough. Like, we can't do that. Like, this is ridiculous. Vice versa, same thing with the right. If they show up and say, monopolies on oil, you're gone. Like, you've had your first chance. You propose something else. We're not doing monopolies anymore. It doesn't benefit anybody. Goodbye. Right? So that's another way to kind of enforce the Constitution. Do you remember? I'm sure you do, because both you and I generally fall middle right. Mm-hmm. Is when Obama said the Constitution is not a historical document.
Yes.
When he said that, I got so mad. And I was in high school. So it was 2008. I was a sophomore. He said that. And I got so mad because I said it is a historical document. And it is something that we literally go to war over and die for. And for you to say that is a giant slap in the face. Then the left came up with this other slogan to make it seem better, is that it's a living document. Mm-hmm. So if it's a living document like the right says, then why don't we make amendments that keep up with the times? And this was specific to the Second Amendment. And they said the Second Amendment was written when we had muskets. Now we have full machine guns with full automatic laser beam clips, and then they just went off into the rants because they don't literally know anything about weapons, and they're not educated, like, really on that at all. And that started the whole battle for the 2A from about 2008 on, right?
But there's reasons behind that, though.
So, elaborating.
Like, it should be a living document.
Bill Clinton has his, assault weapon ban and so on and so forth. So it predates Obama. But, really, like, 2008 is when it kind of really kicked up into full gear. So there's the argument to both sides. And you brought up the left's, which is technically it is a living document. Amendments should be looked at and kind of, ironed out a little bit with how we're articulating things, so on and so forth. The right's argument is, specifically for the Second Amendment, it's not about the ability to have the weaponry. It's not about what the military or law enforcement uses. It's about allowing the citizens to be armed with the same capabilities as the government to overthrow the government if need be. It's not about the personal protection, which is the left's argument, like, why do you need this type of weapon, right? So that's because when you look at things as which is like a new term, a constitutionalist, that's what it's about, is if the government has this, I should have this, so that in the event I need to overthrow the government as a citizen of the nation, I'm able to. Mm-hmm. So if the government has an M1 tank, I should be able to buy an M1 tank. And then you have the people in the middle that are like, what if you're insane? And then you have those, which is why we have a Tom. Because a Tom comes around and says, but what if you're insane?
Right.
And then you and I are like,
Fair.
Because what if you are insane,
Correct.
Right? So then you have that revolving conversation. So it kind of blends both parties. What we've run into, though, is that now, just like when someone's been in for too long, they know the loopholes. Mm-hmm. Look at any insurance agent. They know the loopholes.
Right.
So if you're trying to buy a new homeowner's insurance policy, you'll have the homeowner's insurance agent tell you and or ask you questions in a certain way that direct you to answer a certain way so that you get the better rate so that you're not totally on your rump, right? So that's the problem, is that there's no term limits, and specifically consecutive term limits, where they need to be. And people in the middle that are proposing those things are called extremists or whatever. And then you run-of-the-mill politics all over
This
again.
is a super interesting discussion, and I'm not 100% sure we should go down this route with 51 minutes in, but we talk a lot about term limits and how people should leave after 2 terms because that makes sense. That's what the president does. That should be what Cuomo did. That's what everything going down should have term limits. What about the Supreme Court? Do you feel like they should, because they're a lifetime? So do you think that they should have term limits? People don't understand the whole role of the Supreme Court. It's literally to interpret the Constitution the way it's written. So it doesn't matter if you're left or right registered. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. Your interpretation of you being on the Supreme Court is to interpret the Constitution how it's written. So there really shouldn't be, it should be pretty black and white. If we're being honest.
Should be.
Correct, which is why when people were mad about Brett Kavanaugh going in and like Amy Coney Barrett when she was being vetted for it, they have their own demons, sure, but they're constitutionalists. Like you said, that term comes out because they interpret the Constitution the way it should be written. Same with people on the left. Like, it doesn't matter what party you're on. In the Supreme Court, you're supposed to interpret the Constitution how it's written, which is the whole point of the Supreme Court. Do you think that they should have term limits or not?
I'm going to hit you with another question.
Go for it.
Based on the fact that not everybody wants to be in the Supreme Court, do you think that should be factored into the decision for Supreme Court term limits?
That not everybody wants to be in?
The sample size is so small
Sure.
that you don't have a lot of people trying to run for it. Do you think that so that every seat is filled, so that it is fair and balanced, then that should play a factor in term limits for Supreme Court?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that we're getting to that point with regular Congress in the House. There's going to be a point where no one wants to get into politics at all. And we're going to be in the same situation for them. And then at that point, are we going to have lifetime?
No.
Exactly.
Then civil war.
Right.
Because again, like, it's going to trickle down to, I'm sick of this person, let's overthrow him. And then again, what happens in other nations? Venezuela, Cuba, etc. Like, that's what happens. So there's too much power in one specific seat. The people get sick of it. They overthrow them. I mean, we're on that course. So unless something changes, then that's what we're going to be dealing with.
I think that it all comes down to the squeaky wheel gets the oil for everything in life.
And right now, a lot of people in the middle are getting some of the oil. Not all of it, but some of it. No pun intended, because we need oil now. Thanks, Joe. Dude, speaking of that, I found out...
It's like $8 in California right now.
I found out that the Supreme Court denied his Keystone Pipeline executive order to shut it down.
Really?
So one of the reasons why oil is so high right now is because of all the other aspects of the Democratic Party directly impacting fossil fuels, where it's the Green New Deal and then the push for electric vehicles, and they don't know what they're going to be dealing with in the future. So they're hoarding oil, which right now it's an extreme version of what happens every election cycle. You see it within the commercial and industrial side of things between steel, pharmaceuticals, and then a lot of like metal shops, fab shops, things like that, where the trades are impacted because people don't want to spend money because they don't know what the president's going to enact and or do. So seeing that with oil, it definitely makes sense. And then also supplies or demand is so high right now that they're restricting the supply. That's why it's jacking up. So it's in part to Biden, but it's not fully Biden's fault. But if anybody tries to tell me that the president has nothing to do with oil prices, you're absolutely out of your mind. And now you have legitimately 3 different administrations as a sample size to choose from, where it was high with Obama, it was dirt cheap with Trump, and now it's super high with Biden. So you tell me, like, are you blind or are you... Because it's frustrating. It really is.
Would you ever get an electric car? Like, are you thinking of it in the future?
It's a toy. It's not an everyday, especially in Buffalo, New York. Having a Tesla in Buffalo, New York makes absolutely no sense to me. What happens when it's 10 degrees outside and you lose about 15% of your battery because it's so cold the battery can't function the way it's supposed to? Plus, they're so freaking low to the ground. What happens?
Yeah.
For me, it's a toy. I would have a Tesla as, for about 7 to 15 weeks out of the year in Buffalo, where it actually makes sense. I would keep it in a stored, heated, climate-controlled pole barn.
Probably heated by oil.
And yeah, basically, or natural gas. You know what I mean? Like, dude, fossil fuels fund so much of our everyday life, and no one really understands. Absolutely. They only think it's about oil. It's not. Yeah. We literally make toothbrushes with fossil fuels. So that's why I would have one. And I would not get one unless I could have a roof that's also a solar panel that recharges the car. Yeah. I would wait for that. But it's a toy. I would add it to the collection. You know what else is in the collection? A V8 standard 6-speed Jaguar F-Type. That's what's in the collection. So that's where I'm at. Yeah, I'm basically the only way out. Vote red. No, I'm just kidding. That's it, man. It's gonna be a long.
What do you think? Last thing. What do you think about businesses getting into politics? Like making actual. Like we joke about the whole Jackrabbit thing, but that just happened, so that's why I'm bringing it up.
Right.
Like, do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's a bad idea? What are your thoughts on?
At the end of the day, a business is just trying to make money, and people are people, regardless of title. So it's tough to kind of separate all of that. Mm-hmm. It's not like the separation of church and state, right? So I think a business is just going to have to be lumped in with politics, and then it's just going to be a part of it because they're going to have to follow society and then also follow people. So if someone political shows up to an establishment, it doesn't necessarily mean that establishment agrees with that person's political views. It just means that they're a business, they're open for business, and if that specific person has a following and it brings more business to that business, mm-hmm.
They're in the business to make money, so
correct. Then whatever. Now, that's one instance. Now, what about a federal mandate with a private employer's following of that federal mandate? That's the argument.
Because that's a conscious decision to follow.
Correct. Yeah. And then that's the separation of, the state's power versus the federal government's power and how they want to dictate their employees, what they feel is safe, and the business entity of it, and it's wild. So, of course, that brings up the whole the COVID vaccine is separate from polio, and mm-hmm. It's like, is it? Yes, it is. No, it's not. Then you go down that rabbit hole, and then at the end of the day, what if a business says we're gonna mandate a COVID vaccine once 60 years have passed and we have enough of a clinical trial? Then they're gonna have the people fighting that, saying that technology's been around for a bunch mm-hmm. of years, and then down that rabbit hole. So it's all based on.
Did you watch the
person's response?
Did you watch the Joe Rogan episode with Sanjay Gupta?
Who is he again?
The CNN
correspondent.
Yeah.
I saw the first probably 12, 15 minutes of it. That's about it.
It was just funny because, I have a lot of respect for the guy after listening to it. That's the thing about Rogan's podcast that I really, really like, is that people from the other side of the aisle come on quite a bit, and it's very fascinating to hear their viewpoints and have respect for them after that.
Well, it's also because he's got 3 hours to talk to him face to face.
Right, yeah. But he could not come up with a way or a reason as to why these whole federal vaccine mandates don't include or don't exclude people who have already been exposed to it.
Right.
He could not say anything about that.
No.
And he's like, Joe, you're not vaccinated. And he's like, I understand that, but I'm 13% more protected than you having the vaccine. Like, I'm more protected than you. And he's like, well, then we don't know how long natural immunity lasts. And he's like, we don't know how long the vaccine lasts. And we already need a booster shot. Jamie's got thick lines. That's what he just kept saying because the antibody test spits out lines. But like, I just don't, that's the thing of this whole mandate that I just don't understand, is because we're basing it around you having the vaccine, not if you actually have COVID, which pisses me off. Like, unvaccinated people can't go to the Bills game. Unvaccinated people can't go to the Sabres game. Unvaccinated people can't go back to work, regardless if you have antibodies or not. Like, it doesn't follow the science. It's just, do you have the vaccine or not?
And you're not allowed to question the science as a Republican.
It's so stupid.
And I brought that up to my in-laws, and I said, I brought up natural immunity, and they said, I've never seen any data about natural immunity. And I go, there's two things to that. One, you kind of indirectly told me you're only getting your information from MSM. Mm-hmm. And then two, wouldn't you want to know? And then three, I'm trying to word it correctly. The third point is exactly what you said. It is essentially better than the vaccine, and we don't know how long both of them lasted or will last, but we do know people with SARS-CoV-1,
Still
because
are
2 is
immune to it.
COVID, have antibodies
20 years later,
20
right?
years later.
Yeah.
So how is this different from SARS-1? How does this work? And there's not enough on MSM being released about antibodies, about natural immunity, and that's one of the main issues between the left and the right, is because the right does the research and the left only does and follows what is being told to them, which historically used to be okay, but in today's day and age, it's not.
Yeah.
And you're having that generational bump where that's the reality, and then some people are okay with understanding and believing that, and then others are not. Yeah. So it's wild. And the other point was, what did you bring up about after natural immunity on his show? He brought up natural immunity, and then
that was really the main point, was just natural immunity.
What was after that, though? Jamie's got thick lines, and then he said
because
something
the
else.
antibodies and stuff like that, and now people with antibodies are like have the thicker lines than the people that don't have antibodies, and it's just because Jamie's been exposed to COVID and he's been exposed to the Delta variant, so now his antibodies are huge because he has antibodies for both of them. Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing that people also have to, I mean, I'm no scientist. I'm going to put that out there right now.
Same.
But the vaccine comes out, and from what my understanding is that it is forcing your body to make the spike proteins that the COVID-19 variant has. So your body is now protected and knows to fight anything that comes into your body with spike proteins. The issue is Delta variant doesn't have the same spike proteins as the COVID variant. So that's why people are getting sick again, is because their immunity from the vaccine that is forcing them to create spike proteins isn't the same spike proteins as the Delta variant. That's why it's sneaking through. If you have natural immunity to COVID because you've got COVID by contracting it, your body produced antibodies for the entire COVID molecular structure. So it's not just the spike proteins, it's this molecular structure of COVID-19. So now the Delta variant shares similarities between the molecular structure of regular COVID, except for the spike proteins. So now that's why people with antibodies aren't getting as sick with the Delta variant as people with the vaccine.
Exactly.
From my understanding.
Correct. And then I remember what it was. It was questioning science.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's just an overall thing.
I brought up the point of when we questioned an egg. When eggs first came out, it was horrible for your cholesterol to eat an egg yolk.
Yeah.
Then people questioned that. People
are still scared about it.
So people question the egg, right? And then all of a sudden we question the science behind the egg, and then we come to find out that the egg yolk isn't necessarily bad for your cholesterol. It's not your only, but you're gaining 2 grams of protein as well by eating the egg yolk. Eat a whole egg. It's fine. If you want to cut some of the cholesterol out, then have an egg white. We question outer space every day. What happened with COVID is what we've seen is people on the right question science because science is allowed to be questioned. The left had a conniption and said, stop questioning science. This is fact. This is what we got to do. It's national health. It's national security. This is what we have to do. Fauci, Fauci, Fauci. I brought that up. And they said, you're allowed to question science. And I said, you're not, because the Democrats are currently calling Republicans extremists and conspiracy theorists for questioning science. And that's one of the major issues. And then they had no recollection to that. They're like, what are you talking about? I was like, this is what I'm saying. Yeah. So like the right has memories of elephants where we remember all of that. And then when it comes time to vote, that's why we vote the way we vote, which is red. Because we remember the hypocrisy in the left, and we're just like, we don't want that anymore. We're sick of it. Same with Cuomo. I remember all the bad things about Cuomo, all of them, and I never once voted for Cuomo.
Do you remember the good things about Cuomo?
No.
Do you think that's a flaw?
There's no good things about Cuomo. Dude, I can go on for hours. So anyways.
There's a lot of bad things, but now that we have Hochul in office, he was a small business guy. There was some good things about his aspect when he treated small businesses.
Farm distilling?
Yeah. I mean,
that's the only good thing. The farm license for distilleries. So anyways, let me finish my point before I forget, because, hashtag CTE, Sean understands. Hashtag
Republicans never forget rhinos.
Yeah, we got elephants. Memories of elephants. I could go down the list of all the awful things Cuomo did and then add like 3 caveats of good things. And then I was talking to a lot of people on the left outside of main laws about Cuomo. And they're just like, well, I don't remember any of that. I don't they're like, what are you talking about? Or I don't remember that. Or he's not that bad. Or who's coming up after him? Or I'm just going to vote party lines.
Right.
And that's not okay either. It's a dumpster fire. So you made me lose my train of thought. So that's specifically for me why I vote the way I vote.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily that I'm opposed to voting for blue. Even though I'm registered right because then I'm allowed to vote more often. If I registered the way I really am, I'm not allowed to vote in primaries, which is another topic of discussion. Why not? How come I can't vote for Mayor of Buffalo?
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm in Erie County. My taxes help Buffalo. I spend money in Buffalo, and I can't vote for the mayor of Buffalo because I don't live in the city. So if I don't like what's going on, I just don't go to the city anymore. What if I want a good steak and a nice oven cooked pizza? I don't really know any in the suburbs. Do you?
No.
I know like one. It's a disaster. So I vote red. Just kidding.
It's going to be interesting because when we record the next episode, the mayoral election would have been completed, right?
Yeah, because it's November 2nd.
Yeah, what's today?
It's October 26th.
So next week.
Next week, it falls right around there.
It's going to be interesting to see the outcome of that because we
record the day before if we record on a Monday.
Yeah. That's going to be an interesting result. And that's going to really dictate.
We should record the 3rd so we can talk about it.
All right, I'm down. We have an interview on the 2nd. So I am very interested to see the results of that and the immediate impact of Buffalo with.
It's going to be a revolt if it goes one way or the other. Just kidding. But seriously, people are going to be really mad.
Yeah. All right, everybody. This was a stressful episode, 100%, because we talked about some pretty hot topics.
Well, no. There's people that have their opinion, and then in the grand scheme of things, big tech is a problem, and a majority of America falls in the middle, and no one knows how to handle
but it was
what's
hot
really
topics.
going on.
Like, these are real topics.
Yeah, they're real topics.
That's what I'm saying. It gives people's blood pressure going, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on. This had to be a good discussion.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't, we made jokes, but we're not saying go one way or the other side's wrong.
We're very open-minded. Please subscribe. But yeah, so that's really it. Take us out, Mike.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for one, putting up with us, but then two, for all of our Patreons, all of our supporters, and as well as our upcoming business sponsors, which we'll dive into next episode. So I'm excited for all of that. There is a lot of growth. On a real note, we are growing, which is really exciting. We have a lot of upcoming content, which is going to be cool for you guys, and we're excited to try different products coming up. So that's going to be neat. Yeah. And then our reviews are going to keep chugging. After the 100th Wednesday whiskey review, there's going to be other options other than whiskey. So that's going to be cool. So yeah, thank you for all your support thus far. We've surpassed 380 subscribers, which is really cool. And our Instagram has been recently blowing up, which is neat with followers. So we've exceeded 1340 so far on Instagram. Yeah. So yeah, other than that,
I'm interested. Everybody that listened to today's discussion, do you enjoy political talk? We didn't talk about the Bills this week, obviously, because Bills had a bye week. We could have talked about Titans Chiefs because that was an exciting game. Chiefs suck. But do you enjoy the political conversations? Mike and I are obviously on the same side of the aisle, so it's a little bit challenging to get differing opinions in here. I mean, we try to be as reasonable as possible when we talk about this stuff, just to play devil's advocate with some of these situations. But do you guys enjoy this discussion? Because we can talk for literally hours on this type of stuff, on what grinds our gears and what the other side would maybe be thinking. So if you like that discussion, we'll continue doing it. If you don't like it, maybe we'll reel it back a little bit. I don't know.
I mean, to be fair, we haven't dove into anything recent in that realm in months.
Yeah.
So if you're new, this isn't super common, but
Right, yeah. But today and last week, I think we dove a little bit into it. But let us know in the comments below if you like it or not.
guys, because my liberal in-laws came into town.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Please remember to follow us on Instagram at the Buffalo Happy Hour 12, on Facebook at the Buffalo Happy Hour, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's absolutely free to do. And please leave a like on this video. It helps us with the YouTube algorithms and getting us out to other people. We have some new content coming for you on Thursdays, potentially in the future too. So make sure you're subscribed for that. It's going to be well worth it. And that's really it. So thank you everybody for listening to today. This is episode 110. It's getting up there, bud. We've been doing way too many of these. We got to shut this down. But thank everybody. Appreciate it. If you're going to pick up the whiskey that we tried today, that was Hudson Whiskey Baby Bourbon. We batch record these. So if you are going to be picking this one up, or if you're going to be picking up any of the other ones that we just did, please remember to drink responsibly. Be a good person. And Michael.
Do not litter.
We're out.
We'll be right back.